Nazi. Wie bitte? Haben Sie mich gerade als Nazi beschimpft?
Na, Sie sind doch einer.
Das ist ja eine Unverschämtheit. Nur weil ich in der NSDAP und in der SS bin, bin ich noch lange kein Nazi. Wahrscheinlich bin ich auch noch rechtsextrem, oder was?
Ja, aber was sollen Sie denn sonst sein?
Ich bin vielleicht ein besorgter Bürger, der Angst vor Überfremdung hat. Aber ich bin nicht rechts. Und ich bin erst recht kein Nazi. Hey, Sie da? Sehe ich etwa wie ein Nazi aus?
Nö, würde ich jetzt nicht sagen.
Na, sehen Sie? Aber der ist wahrscheinlich für Sie auch ein Nazi, hm? Nazis, 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 lauter Nazis. Wenn einem die Argumente ausgehen, dann holt man schnell mal die gute alte Nazikeule raus.
Es hat doch nichts mit Nazikeule zu tun.
Sie machen sich das Leben sehr einfach. Nur weil jemand die Mainstream-Meinung nicht teilt, ist er gleich ein Nazi.
Aber Nazi sein ist doch längst Mainstream. Ihr Nationalsozialisten seid an der Macht.
Ach ja, ich vergaß. In Ihrer Welt sind ja alle Nazis. Der Führer ist wahrscheinlich für Sie auch ein Nazi, was?
Ja?
Jetzt reicht's aber. Führerbeleidigung. Mitkommen.
Das sind jetzt über...
Ja, ja, ich weiß. Nazi-Methoden.
I think that video sums up everything fairly well with what's going on. So thank you guys for being able to join me. I greatly appreciate it. And hold on one moment if I can figure out what I'm doing here. There we go. Yeah, so the reason why I play that is because it seems to be the popular thing, or the instant response that anytime you bring up the situation going on in Ukraine, you're instantly disregarded and put off as intellectually disingenuous about the situation, when in fact the situation couldn't be any more serious as what it is. And I think this comedy skit from a few years ago really does a fantastic job explaining that situation and really kind of going in there. And while this is just a comedy skit that had nothing to do with Ukraine, and it's from 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I think it's perfect for the situation. And so that kind of opens me up into what I want to talk about in this video. So the last two videos, I really broke down and went a little heavy into the NATO aspects of this conflict. This is something that NATO has been pushing for 15 to 20 years, or you could even make the argument that they've been pushing for this since the dissolution, or the dissolving of the USSR. There's a word that's escaping me right now. And in my personal opinion, I feel that after the USSR broke apart, NATO should have either invited Russia into the NATO. They should have given them the opportunity to be a part of NATO, or NATO should have disbanded. NATO shouldn't exist in the capacity that it does now. It is operated with nothing but malfeasance, in what they've been doing in Ukraine and all throughout the world. Look at the color revolutions, that's gone on. And, Ukraine is the tipping point, for that. Or the boiling point, whatever word choice you want to be able to use on that. It's 2 a.m. in the morning, so I apologize if I'm not firing on all cylinders right now. So, and the issues that we have in Ukraine are very serious to the point that, if more people do not become aware of it and something doesn't happen, this is something that's going to affect everybody on a global scale. No matter where you are in the world, you're not going to be able to escape the problems that are going to come from Ukraine. And, that's because, you have two issues that have been brewing with that nation. You have a deep-rooted Nazi issue with Ukraine that's been there, since the German Nazi Party had arrived and started growing. The Ukrainian Nazi element was deeply entrenched in with the German Nazi party. And, as we've seen, and it's been out there. I mean, you look at Operations Paperclip, you know, um, the CIA, NATO, had worked so hard to exclude Ukrainian Nazis from Western Ukraine from the Nuremberg trials, and which allowed them to be able to take those scientists, to take the information, to gather the information, to understand what was going on. We might never have known about the 1,000-year Reich that was being planned by the Nazis if it wasn't for the information and intel we got from the Ukrainian Nazis, because we gave them immunity. Like I mentioned with Operation Paperclip, the NATO and even the USSR had gone in and divided up the Nazi scientists and pulled them into their own respective country. NASA is a direct byproduct of those Nazi scientists. You can make a very rational argument that the space race between the United States and the USSR was more about a race of what team of Nazi scientists could perform better in their respective groups. You could either make the rational argument that it wasn't even the USSR or the United States that went into space. It was the Nazis, because it was their scientists, their teams, their engineers that made it all possible for both sides to do what they were able to do. And, those are things with history it's out there. Anybody can look this stuff up. Operation Paperclip is one of the biggest things that you can look up, and it's out there. And the fact that so many people don't even know that it's there. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not hidden. You can just simply type Operation Paperclip and just bam, right? Get all the information with it. But it's more than just that with the issue. To understand what's going on, we have to work harder to find the truth than we've ever had to do that before. But we need to be honest about what's going on in Ukraine. And, the situation is it's bad, right? It's very serious. And I don't think enough people are taking it serious with that on there, especially when we're coming out of a period politically in the United States where ultra nationalist, white supremacy, neo Nazis was a hot topic of the mainstream media for the last 10 years. And now we find ourselves in a position where we have hardcore de facto, Nazi elements in Ukraine that are tied directly to the Nazi party in Germany. And we're disregarding it with it. But I want to talk more about the deep-rooted issues in Ukraine, because it's not just a Nazi issue. It is a deep-rooted cultural and national issue in Ukraine. So for a lot of you that aren't aware, people might understand Ukrainians and Russians are Slavic, right? You understand Kievan Rus. Kiev used to be Kievan Rus, but you maybe don't know too much about that. The Kievan Rus Empire was an empire that did not survive the Mongols with it. Out from that Kievan Rus empire or group, you have the ethnic Ukrainians, ethnic Russians, and ethnic Belarusians. And those three groups have splintered off into their respective areas. The Rus have gone on into Moscow, Moskva, I think is the way it was pronounced. The ethnic Ukrainians have pulled a little further back, went west towards Poland, and then the Belarusians in Belarusia. And the Ukrainians view themselves as the rightful and true and only descendants of the Kievan Rus. That the Russians and the Belarusians are not pure Kievan Rus. They're essentially imposters. And over the hundreds of years since the Kievan Rus empire or group has, dissolved, there has been political and ethnic tensions between these groups. It is something that manifested into the Ukrainian Nazi Party, that was part of the German Nazi establishment. And when the German Nazi Party had moved into Ukraine, they were greeted with open arms with it. And while there's a lot of different narratives of how this went down, that it was they just embraced the Germans because they hated the Russians and the Soviets, and there's a lot of different narratives that they're talking about, but we're talking on a very mass scale. To put into perspective, the Ukrainian Nazis are responsible for killing hundreds of thousands of ethnic Polish people. Just absolutely exterminated over 60,000 Jews in Ukraine in a matter of a very short period of time. And a lot of the information that I have seen indicates that the Nazi Ukrainians were responsible for exterminating Jews prior to Germany starting their process of extermination with the Jews. So this is something that people need to talk about and people need to be aware about with it. So now that is the backbone to what's going on. You have a lot of hate from the Ukrainian side. So how does this manifest through Ukrainian culture? It is something that is deeply entrenched in there. To kind of give you a perspective of what that means, the first thing I want to show you guys here is a prominent journalist. This is Dmitry Gordon. Dmitry Gordon is a national journalist in Ukraine. He has been a part of multiple news agencies. He currently runs his own YouTube channel with 2.03 million subscribers, and he is a proud member of the right sector. So while we have heard about the Azov take a lot of media attention because they are fully incorporated into Ukrainian military. The right sector are also incorporated into the Ukrainian military. However, they are incorporated into the terrestrial defense force. That is the volunteer side of the Ukrainian military, not the Foreign Legion, just their terrestrial defense force. There are thousands and thousands. I believe that I've seen the numbers as high as about 5, almost 6,000 troops a part of the right sector in the terrestrial defense force. They are a major element on the Donbass lines, fighting the Ukrainians along with the Azov with it. Not only is he a proud member of the right sector, he has given an ample amount of time to other national figures. He's interviewed multiple figures throughout the Ukrainian government, multiple celebrities, other journalists. And this is a person that is not bashful about his politics and his views on things. There are interviews recently with some of the Azov members that are in the encirclement in Mariupol, inside the Avov Steel, or however you pronounce it, plant there, which from what we're seeing is the most heavily fortified area within Ukraine. And while there are down to just about 2,000 to 3,000 fighters left in Mariupol in 2 specific areas, the Avov Steel might be something that it takes another several weeks to root these fighters out of there because of how well entrenched they are in the defenses of it. This is also an area that in my next video I'll talk about that has an underground network of tunnels that extends 20 to 30 kilometers with facilities underground with it. So this is a person that has had multiple interviews with him. This is a gentleman right now. He's one of the commanders of the Azov forces in Mariupol. And he's interviewing him and talking to him about the situation. And so the reason why I played that video in the beginning is, as I mentioned, like, we're at a situation where it is out in the open, right? That these guys are a Nazi element within the Ukrainian military. But if you acknowledge it and you talk about it, people call you're crazy. This Nazi element, this thing on my shirt, that's not Nazi. That's what are you looking at, right? And that's where we're at on it. And I just realized I haven't even shown you guys the video, man. I'm doing a fantastic job here, man. I'm talking about this guy's YouTube page, and I don't even have it up on the screen, man. Whew. Now you know why I have 7 subscribers. So let me go show you what I thought I was showing you. Man, I'm doing fantastic. So right here, you'll see he's got 2.03 million subscribers. And as you go down the list here, he has interviewed everybody from, political figures, celebrities, athletes, military officials. This is a person that is a proud member of the right sector with that. And as I was showing you here with this interview, this is the gentleman that's a commander of the right sector. I'm sorry, of the Azov. And it's a full 24-minute, 52-second interview with him. And there's multiple ones on his channel. And there's ones that aren't even featured on this channel. They're just featured on national television. Ukrainian 24, I think, is the channel. But who are the right sector, right? So he's a member of that, but who are they? Well, let's look at their YouTube page with it. So their YouTube page has 54.9 thousand subscribers. This has actually grown about almost 20,000 subscribers in the last 2 weeks alone. They're just as prolific as the Azov are. They're not at the size of the Azov. Their YouTube channel isn't as high quality, high production value as what the Azov are. But they're up there. There's tens of thousands of right sector members throughout Ukraine, and they actively have somewhere up to around 5, maybe even as high as I don't know if I would want to say more than 6,000 personnel in the terrestrial defense force, but 5,000 is a significant number. 5,000 troops can turn the tide of a battle with it. So we have to understand that this is something that is deep rooted, and it's not just with the Azov, but it's also not something that is an insignificant element and is something that we should ignore, like multiple news outlets have told us to do. This is the YouTube page of them. I'm going to show you one of their commanders is a gentleman that is probably in his late 20s. And in 2014, when the right sector was incorporated, he took up arms with the right sector. This is a video of him receiving an award. I believe that it's a Ukraine Hero of Ukraine award. And he's being presented this award by the president of Ukraine in front of what would be equal to the Ukraine, what would, I guess you would call the Ukrainian parliament. There's another word for it. And let me kind of skip forward here. This is him right there shaking hands with the Ukrainian president. Not only is he receiving this award, he's a prominent national figure within Ukraine. He is, as you can see him here, you're going to see him here. You're also going to see him in multiple other videos. He's been featured in, just on here, you're going to see multiple news programs where him and his fiancée or wife have been featured on multiple national Ukrainian news programs. There's an ad right here where he is featured in an ad with the president of Ukraine, and he's the main figure of this commercial representing the forces in Ukraine. This is him right there. You're going to see him again here in a moment walking down the hallway with it. And then you're going to see him again, with his wife or fiance, significant other with it right here. So when you hear people say that the president of Ukraine is Jewish, he would never have Nazi ties, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room that there were Jews that were part of the Nazis in Germany. Like, this is not, we can't be so disingenuous about the situation that we won't acknowledge the facts about it. I'm not saying that because he's Jewish that somehow, it's like, how dare we bring this up? I mean, he has significant ties to these Nazi elements within the government. How do you justify giving an award, the hero of Ukraine, to an individual that is a prominent member of a neo-Nazi element within the military force with it? And that's where we're finding ourselves as in a situation. But the issue with the ultranationalists in Ukraine go much farther than this. We're not only seeing multiple groups in Ukraine that are ultranationalists, that are part of the government in some capacity or another. We're seeing massive amounts of ultranationalists coming from all over the Western world. Just as we saw with the ISIS in Iraq and Syria, with massive influx of foreign fighters from the Muslim world, we're now seeing that of ultranationalists coming in from the Western world, from the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Poland, Lithuania. Lithuania's got a serious issue when it comes to Nazis also. And these are some of the groups that have formed inside of Ukraine. And while some of them, like the Crimea Battalion, are maybe just a few dozen, where I think most of the members have been arrested trying to escape Mariupol, other groups like the Kastov, I think if I'm pronouncing it right, the other name that they go by is the Bella Warriors. And they started out as about 100 fighters, and when the special operation took off, to where now they have swollen to around 3,000 fighters, and they have their own training facility outside of Kiev. That is something that is alarming, to say the least. The amount of individuals that have gone into Ukraine is terrifying. When you understand who these people are, what their ideals are, we are breeding Ukraine to become what ISIS was with that. These are people that want dead Russians at any cost. It doesn't matter if they're civilians or children or women or elderly. It doesn't matter who these people are. They want dead Russians with that. And the fighting in Donbass has been a precursor to this war for 8 years with it. So, it's one thing to show you a journalist and a couple of YouTube pages here, but we have to understand how deep rooted into Ukrainian culture it is. You have the elements from the Kievan Rus where, the ethnic, Ukrainians view themselves as being the rightful heirs to the Kievan Rus, and they want to eliminate the Russians because they are the rightful heir. But how far into the Ukrainian culture does this go? Well, these are some of the books that have come up, and if the video will show, here we go. So these are some of the books that have been found in Ukrainian schools all throughout the country. In these books teach Ukrainian children to hate and despise Russians. And what I mean by that is these books teach Ukrainian children that Russians are inferior to Ukrainians. You don't need to look much further than a group like the KKK in the United States to understand how significant this is. Imagine if the KKK had children's books in all of the elementary schools in the United States, and we're teaching children ethnic whites that blacks were inferior to whites in every way possible. They were evil, they were vile, and we know that this was something that was happening. We know with Woodrow Wilson, the way he changed the academic policies with that. We know within, silent films like Birth of a Nation, and how blacks were viewed, especially black Republicans back in the day, which is what kicked off the lynching epidemic that happened. Most people understand that the lynching, of blacks, but they don't understand why they were lynched, right? So that's something I think people need to look into. And this is something that has gone on in Ukraine since the color revolution in 2013, 2014. These books have been introduced in the schools, but it's not just a few of these books. This is a video that I found that I have been able to verify through other videos and other sources that have found the same books and similar books in schools. These are Russian soldiers showing the books that were found in a kid's school, where in the book the Russians are made out to be this evil, horrible empire, just inferior, just evil and satanic. Maybe not satanic. I think satanic is the wrong word. It's just how I interpret some of the messages I've been able to translate in it. And Ukrainians are the brave warriors, the fighters, the righteous, the good, the pure ones that are fighting the Russians with that. Think Captain America versus Hydra with that. And then you start to understand the messages that are taught in schools. And these are things that, how many people are bringing this up? One of the things in this video he shows you in some of the books, the stamps from the official stamps that they go into the schools with it. And these are the things that are taught to children. So when we understand, how can Ukrainians hate Russians if they're the same? They're the same people. There's no difference genetically between them, right? So if there's no difference genetically, then what is the cause of the issue? And it's all mental, right? Like it's all teaching and upbringing and cultural issues that we have. And this is something that needs to change. It needs to stop. And it's not going to stop unless we have an honest conversation about it and we become aware of it with that. And, so when we go back in, and one of the things that, a lot of people are kind of putting off is the impact that it has on children. So we see these books and we think, okay, so there's books in schools. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, teach children to hate Russians. Maybe hating Russians isn't so bad depending on your views. But what impact does that have on children? All right, so I'm going to play this video and I want you guys to watch it. These are children that are going around and parading their views and their ideals. And I want you to watch this video. And I've been able to verify the clips. A lot of them I've been able to verify. I feel confident in saying this is all accurate. I'm going to show you this video because it puts everything together and it's got subtitles on it. And I think it does a good job, and there's no need for me to make my own version of it.
Слава нації! Україна понад усе! Слава Україні! Героям слава! Слава нації! Смерть ворогам! Україна понад усе! Революція! Революція! Слава нації! Смерть ворогам! Поговоримо. Слава Україні! Героям слава! Слава нації! Смерть москалям!
So this video right here, you see on the bus, is an old man that acknowledges that neo-Nazis are a thing, and he makes a comment about it, and the people on the bus and that woman is screaming at that gentleman right here, facing the window, and calling him a freak because he's against Nazis with it. That video is very telling of the situation that we have, but it's not the only one. It is something that everywhere I look, I see these videos, I see these photos, I see these comments and these posts about this. But it's something that is escaping Ukraine all over the West. Ukrainian refugees are fleeing. We have Ukrainian refugees in German towns that are being forced out of the German towns because of their Nazi ideals, that are espousing these ideals openly in the towns. And the towns, I don't think, expected it. And they forced everybody to leave. Around 100, 150 Ukrainians were essentially kicked out of this town. We have Ukrainians covering themselves in red paint or red liquid, doing performances in squares throughout Europe, talking about the mass murder and the genocide on Ukrainians there. But it goes much further than this. And, one of the things I want to show you is this video right here. And I'm going to put it up. And this is an ad that was featured or was created by a prominent Ukrainian group here in the United States based out of New Jersey. This ad is absolutely disgusting. It is an ad that is designed to rally emotions and hate towards people.
Ми збираємо свої криваві жнива.
I apologize for the sound.
Тепер на вас усіх чекає смерть. За Бучу, Ірпінь, Київ, Харків, Одесу, Маріуполь. Ви будете вбиті всі. Ваші трупи, як найгірше падло, лежатимуть в полях, лісосмугах і вздовж доріг. Їх роздиратимуть собаки і дикі тварини, а ваші матері чекатимуть вас в Твері, Пскові, Рязані. Але ви, сучі виродки, не повернетесь додому. Ніколи. Добро пожаловать в ад.
So when we look at this video, the one thing I want people to take away from this is, while I don't imagine too many people looking up propaganda from ISIS on the internet, but if you look up propaganda from ISIS, the messages and the videos that have been put forward by them, this is eerie in its resemblance to that propaganda. And the only thing that really essentially is different from that video to ones that ISIS has done is Ukraine versus Syria, or ISIS versus Ukraine, however you want to look at it, and the person that is represented in there. And that is about the only difference that we have on it. It is something that I find absolutely disgusting in every way with it. They're not promoting a defense of their nation, which I feel everybody has a right to do. They're promoting a idealism and a desire to kill and destroy Russians, right? So the more you see videos and articles and stories like this, the more you talk about, the more in your psyche, it opens you up to hating Russians. It opens you up to killing Russians, to seeing dead Russians with it. We're not talking about just soldiers. We're talking about innocent people. And the purpose of making these videos is to understand that if we don't do something, a lot more innocent people are going to get hurt. War is bad. There's no way to conduct yourself in a war without understanding and acknowledging that you have to commit an atrocity to engage in war, no matter what side you are on or what the purpose and cause of that war is for. You have to understand, I am okay with X amount of innocent dead people. I'm okay with X amount of harm and danger being done and tragedies in this, in order for you to even be able to conduct a war with that. And because of that, I am completely against war. I don't think the United States should have invaded Iraq or Syria with that. We should have went after Saudi Arabia because they're the ones that funded, paid for, and essentially equipped the forces. We should have gone after them and left everybody else alone. So this is another video I'm going to show you. It's a little girl in Germany performing. I think this was in Munich or Frankfurt. Translation might be a little off on it, so I might have gotten the city wrong. This girl is performing a song from, I believe, prior to the 30s. The song is called Russians Must Die with it. And I'm going to show you this video.
І буде мир на цій землі. І скоро зовсім Росії не буде, і буде мир на всій землі.
Just leave it at that. This is just one of dozens of videos that I'm coming across online that aren't making their way outside of the Russian speaking world, because you post this video on Twitter, your account gets suspended. You post that other video, if it's in support of Ukraine, then your account stays up. If you post as a Russian, like, look at this is horrible, your accounts get suspended. And that's what we're looking at with this kind of stuff. You have these people that are going out there and trying to get people to embrace a ideology of hate. What is the difference in the United States if a KKK members run out there, start performing in the square that all blacks must die? Let's kill blacks. Hoorah, whatever it is. Let's just kill them all. Let's get them out of our towns. They're horrible. They rob. They got the highest crime rate. They got the lowest marriage rate. They got all these, they're all abortions the highest in blacks. They just want to kill babies. Let's get them all out of here, right? Like, would we accept that in the United States? And if we say no to that, how can we accept this in Europe? How can we accept that here? Right? Why is it okay to hate and despise and call for the death of innocent people because you don't like them? Because they invaded your area. But what was the cause of that invasion? Nobody wants to talk and acknowledge the 14 to 16,000 innocent people that have died because the Ukrainian government launched a military attack on a city in their own country and then blamed Russia for it. Because that is the reality of the situation. I'm not the only person saying that. You have international human rights groups that have made documentaries on this, that have launched reports, that have brought evidence forward talking about that have said, look, based on forensic analysis of these rockets, these missiles, these mortar strikes, the artillery rounds that have hit this area, there's no way to explain where they came from other than saying they came from this spot over here, which is controlled by Ukrainian forces, because a mortar round can't go forward, do a 90-degree turn, go another 2 kilometers, and then land in an area. It can't do that. And if it can't do that, then where did that round come from? Right? But nobody wants to acknowledge that. And all we want to do is just build an immense amount of international hate, which is going to build international support for a war with Russia. One that we keep hearing is Russia getting their butt kicked. Russia's losing their forces. Russia has lost hundreds, thousands of tanks, thousands of armor. They've lost so many vehicles and personnel that they almost don't have a military left. They've lost almost their entire military. First, for a nation with a standing military only slightly smaller than the United States, if the numbers that they've put out there were true, then they've only lost a small portion of their forces. However, the numbers that are put out there as of today with Ukraine saying that they've lost about 70,000 troops. For Russia to lose 70,000 troops would mean that they've lost all of their fighting force, their cooks, laundries, medics, their orderlies, the people that take out trash, the fuel delivery people, the people that, sweep the hallways, the janitors. Everybody's either been taken out, or you have some janitor at a facility driving a tank because there's nobody left to do it. Because the force that they have moved into the Crimea area is a small portion of their military. And if that many people have died, that would have wiped out their entire force that they sent to Ukraine. And if that's the case, who's there fighting? Because yes, there's Chechens. Chechens are Russian. There's foreign fighters. You're not going to have a war without foreign fighters. It's just part of war. But those make up small portions. So if they're still there, they're encircling forces. There's a group of about 100,000 Ukrainian servicemen almost completely encircled outside of the Donbass area, south of Kharkiv. If that force is encircled, who's encircling them? Some old babushka? Just a bunch of old babushkas running around? Like, how dare you? Right? Like who's doing it? Because the information that you're told is inaccurate. Because they want you to think that Russia is inferior, that they have no military capabilities, they're incapable of launching a military offensive. Look, it's an absolute failure. So let's go to war with them. We can win. We can beat them. It's not true. Because this is what we're hearing. Is all of this when you hear none of the other stuff. And if somebody like me is coming forward and has to make a video to show you what's going on, think about how insane that is, right? That our national media won't allow you to talk about this. Or not that they won't allow you to talk about it, they just won't talk about it themselves. So one of the things I want to show you before I end this video is the size of the Azov, right? So this is something that a lot of news agencies, CNN, MSNBC, USA Today, Reuters, Associated Press, Fox News, everybody has downplayed the significance, the size and scope of the Azov. So this is the Azov's website. This is one of the most professional websites for a military element. They have, just by their website and their information that you can get off it. If I go up here, give me a moment here to translate this page for you guys. If it's going to translate, apparently. Okay, there we go. So not only are they a major force, they have their own tank battalion. They have their own artillery battalions. They have their own medic division, or not division, but, detachments. These guys are larger than the United States Marines, or I'm sorry, than the United States Army Rangers, but smaller than the United States Marines. They're somewhere in the middle. They're as lethal and as equipped as the Marines and the Rangers are. They, from the reports that I have come across, it looks like they possibly have their own special forces with it. They've received amphibious training. They have anti-air divisions. Well, their anti-air has been essentially taken out, along with just Ukrainian forces in general. Their major headquarters is in Kyiv, right? So their personnel, they're somewhere around, multiple regiments, 3, maybe 4 regiments. At first, I just based on what I was seeing, I got reports that, maybe these guys were up to about 50 to even 60,000 personnel. It looks like that number is significantly less, somewhere more around 15 to 20,000 overall. I don't know how much of that is like administrative personnel, but there are Azov detachments assigned to almost every group within the Ukrainian Marines. So all of the Ukrainian Marines have a few Azov members in them. And from some of the reports that we're hearing about what's going on when these Marines are surrendering in Ukraine, is they're talking about the Azov members that threaten to shoot them in the back if they surrender. And the only reason why they're able to surrender is because they're able to get away. Or the Azov members fearing, getting themselves killed because of the Russian forces constantly advancing and moving in on the Azov plant. They've gone underground, so this is a significant force of what's going on in Ukraine. And, when we take a look at their YouTube page, this is another page that over the course of the last few weeks has gained 20, almost 30,000 subscribers. I have a video that I recorded when I was trying to make my very first one. And these guys were at where the right sector is right now. They were at like 54, 55,000 at the beginning of this war. And then just the last couple of weeks, they've grown exponentially, which is just insane to think about it on that. Their media outreach is superb, right? It is high quality with that on there. But we have to understand that this is not an insignificant force. These are not soldiers that are equipped and trained as a small detachment or a small group, an individual battalion like they once were. They've in a short period of time, most of their videos on their YouTube page, their recruitment videos, are from 2018. And if they came into existence in 2014, and then in 2018, they have some of the most highly advanced training and equipment. What happened? What happened in that 4 years? They had to have gotten an influx of hundreds of millions of dollars and being given some of the most advanced equipment in the Ukrainian military is in the hands of the Azov. You can make a very logical and rational argument that the Azov are the tip of the spear for the Ukrainian military. That's how serious this issue is. So, well, apparently I turned myself off, which I'm sure if you've watched me this long, maybe that's not a bad thing. So, I mean, that's pretty much what I have for you. I do apologize for it taking so long. I do want to say that, one of the things that I'm trying to do in a lot of these videos is verify things as much as I can. And there are plenty of interviews and articles and videos and stuff that I haven't brought forward in this video because I'm not confident in the amount of research that I've done being able to fully verify it. One of the things is a journalist that is calling for the extermination of Russians in the Donbass area, and said that the area is overpopulated and you could easily, eliminate, 3 or about 30% roughly of the population. I think he made a comment somewhere between 300,000 to 1.4 million residents of the Donbass area essentially need to be exterminated, need to be get rid of, because that the Donbass area is a natural resource for Ukraine and it needs to be utilized. And those people are essentially just in the way. The reason why I'm explaining that is because that is what that video is, right? But I'm not comfortable showing you that video, because what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to research that. I want to take a look at this guy. This is the journalist right here. I want to take a look at his YouTube page. I want to take a look at his Facebook. I want to dissect that video. And that video is this one right here. And in here, he calls for the ethnic cleansing of Russians. However, even though this video seems very legitimate, I don't want to just come forward and say, hey, look at this video. This guy's calling for ethnic cleansing of Russians. And maybe the video is manipulated. Maybe the video was, taken out of context. Maybe because of the translation and words and how people speak in Ukrainian, maybe that's not what he was saying. Maybe he was saying something different, but when you translate it, that's how us as English speakers will take it. So I go to his YouTube. I spent hours upon hours researching this guy, figuring out who he is, because I don't even know his name. Then I finally find the information and I keep researching, keep digging, and I look it up. I've spent weeks looking for just the video on, the actual interview itself, finding the raw video, because this is a 30-minute video or interview. And I want to make sure, when I watch this one and I listen to it, is what he's being said in the one video, does it correlate to what's being said in this video? Is it a supercut? Is it edited? Is it manipulated? Is the audio superimposed to the video to try to make it match up? Is it, what's going on here? And that's what I've been trying to do. That's why I want this video here is taking so long to be able to make, because I want to be confident in bringing this stuff forward and saying, hey, this is what's going on. This guy could have been talking about making cupcakes in his video, and somebody edited it in a way to make it sound like he's calling for genocide. So when I bring these videos to you, I want you guys to understand that I am doing my best to make sure that this is 100% accurate, or accurate to the point that I am comfortable with you knowing that this is what's going on with it. So hopefully that helps in understanding what I have shown you guys here. Again, this is a small sample of what's actually out there. The vast majority of the stuff that I want you to see, I can't show you because it violates the content policies with things, because I can't just put videos of women and children and people being laying dead on the road, brutally murdered, and other things happening on there. While I can say this is what's happening, I want to be able to show you what is happening, and I will do my best to be able to do that within the rules that I have to operate in. So I have 2 more videos coming out that are related to this. The next one is going to be on the civilian casualties of the war. What is happening from the Russian perspective and the Russian side of things, because all we hear about is the Ukrainian. So we need to understand what's going on from that perspective. And mostly the perspective of the people in the areas, because while everybody hears about what's going up in Kiev and the conflict up there, the real war was in Donbass in the south. What was happening up in Kiev was a distraction with that. So I'm going to show you some videos and footage and stuff, firsthand accounts of things coming from the civilians of the Mariupol and Donbass area, so you can hear from them what is going on out there. And I'm going to do my best to verify everything the most accurately, and I'm going to show my work in that regard. So thank you guys for watching. I truly appreciate it. Let me get this thing off the screen. If I can figure out how. Learning in progress. But yeah, so thank you guys. I truly appreciate you. Please, do the whole YouTube thing, man. Leave me some comments, leave me some love. I got 7 subscribers, I'd appreciate it if I got to like 1.9 million tomorrow, but that ain't gonna happen. So I'm cool with 8, if you guys could give me that, I'd appreciate it. But thanks. Hopefully the next one you guys will enjoy.